Have you ever wondered what it would take to build a brand new society from the ground up? Well, today we're diving into an incredible historical blueprint from the 7th century. It's the story of how the Prophet Muhammad managed to build a whole new community in the city of Medina based on a pretty radical vision of unity and justice.
I mean, just imagine the challenge for a second. You've got refugees who've lost everything. You have local tribes who've been rivals for generations, and you have people from entirely different faiths all trying to live together in one city. How on earth do you get them to see themselves as one single community? That was the exact situation in Medina, and the solution they came up with is still studied today.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the big vision for this new society. Then, we'll dig into the core ideas it was built on. After that, we'll see how those ideas were actually put into practice, how that incredible legacy was carried forward, and finally, we'll ask the big question: what can this ancient blueprint possibly teach us today? Okay, so first things first, we need a little context. When the Prophet and his followers migrated from Mecca, this wasn't just about finding a new place to live. It was a golden opportunity to build a completely new kind of community, one based on ideals that were a world away from the old tribal system they knew. You have to understand, the social landscape of Medina back then was wildly complex. You had the Muhajirin, the migrants who came from Mecca, then you had the Ansar, the locals who took them in, and on top of that, you had several established Jewish tribes. The challenge was to somehow weave all these different threads into one single social fabric, a community they called the Ummah. That's a monumental task, to say the least. Now, before anyone wrote a law or laid a single brick, this whole project was grounded in a really clear set of principles. And these weren't just, some nice suggestions. They were seen as divine instructions, the moral and philosophical bedrock for everything that was about to happen. Right at the heart of it all was this fundamental shift in what it means to belong. The new organizing principle wasn't going to be your tribe or your bloodline anymore. It was your faith. This verse creates a whole new kind of family, a brotherhood of believers. Such a simple idea, but it was absolutely revolutionary. It was designed to override all those old, divisive loyalties. And this idea of brotherhood, it wasn't just a warm and fuzzy feeling. It was a framework built on real, actionable principles. Unity was job number one. Cooperation was about proactively building a good society, not just defending your own tribe. Justice had to be non-negotiable, even if it meant ruling against yourself or your own family. And big decisions, they were made through shura, or mutual consultation, making sure everyone had a voice. So you've got these incredible ideals on paper, but how do you make them real? How do you actually engineer a society based on them? This is where we get into the practical, on-the-ground steps that brought the Medina model to life. This really was the core transformation. Think of it like a complete reboot of the social operating system. For centuries, your loyalty was to your clan, your tribe, period. The Medina model flipped that completely. Now, your primary allegiance was to this new, inclusive community of faith, the Ummah, where shared values were the glue, not bloodlines. And they wrote it all down in this amazing document, what we now call the Constitution of Medina. It explicitly stated that the Jewish tribes were part of the Ummah, the same community. It set up rules for collective security, and, get this, it guaranteed freedom of religion for everybody. I mean, just pause and think about that. A social contract for a pluralistic society in the 7th century is incredible. But it didn't stop there. The model tackled economic and social issues head-on through a system called muwakahat. They paired a migrant family with a local one to share their home and their resources. They established a new public market, but banned exploitative stuff like ridiculously high interest and monopolies. They created a public treasury to act as a social safety net. And finally, they declared that every person's life, property, and dignity were sacred. And if you want to boil it all down to one single, powerful idea, this quote from the Prophet's final sermon might just be it. In a world completely structured around race and lineage, this was a mind-blowing declaration. It says the only thing that makes one person better than another is their character, their consciousness of God. Nothing else. A blueprint is one thing, but it's only as good as the builders who come after. So what happened next? How were these foundational principles kept alive by the next generation of leaders? Let's take a look at the legacy, especially through the Prophet's family, the Ahl Bayt.
A perfect example is Imam Ali. His famous letter to his governor in Egypt, a man named Malik al-Ashtar, is basically considered a masterclass in how to govern with justice. It's a detailed instruction manual on how to apply these core principles when you're the one in charge.
And listen to this line from that letter. He tells his governor that the people he rules over are one of two things. Either they are your brother in faith, or they are your equal in creation, your equal in humanity. I mean, just wow. It sets up this profound basis for universal human dignity, instructing a leader to treat everyone with mercy and justice no matter what they believe. And that legacy just kept going. Imam Hassan chose peace to protect the community from civil war. His brother Imam Hussein made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of justice. Later on, Imam Zayn al-Abidin actually wrote down a whole treatise of rights, spelling out our duties to one another. And Imam Jafar al-Sadiq taught that the best way to represent these values was simply through your own good character. Each one, in their own way, carried that same torch of justice and unity forward. Okay, so that brings us to the million-dollar question. This is all amazing history, but so what? What does a social model from 1400 years ago have to do with our lives right here, right now? How can these principles possibly apply in a world that looks so different? Well, when you think about it, it's not actually that much of a stretch. Creating mentorship programs or aid networks for immigrants, that's just a modern version of that brotherhood between the locals and the migrants. Setting up charitable funds or interest-free loan circles, that directly reflects the economic justice of the Medina model. Practicing inclusive leadership, that's just another word for consultation. See? It's all about taking the spirit of the principle and giving it a modern form. And that really is the heart of it, isn't it? The point isn't to try and copy-paste a 7th century society. The real challenge, and the real opportunity, is to understand those timeless principles, like justice, compassion, and unity, and then get creative about how we build modern structures that actually bring them to life.